presentation and demonstration to ask questions via your chat window, and we will take periodic breaks to answer those questions as best possible. Thank you for your attendance, and I'm going to turn it over to a polling question now. So, do you have any current content management strategy? And if you could just select one of the answers. Next question. I'm going to turn it over now to Dan Dial.
Good morning and afternoon, everyone. My name is Dan Dial, and I'll be working with Liz Fraley to run the controls of our system. If I could, David, could you confirm that you can see my screen?
I cannot.
I did not see that I had. There we go. Very good. So, as a quick introduction to the presentation we'll be giving, you're going to see a non-technical writer, technical publications person, myself, interact with content created by another technical writer. So, this is a situation where people who are involved in product development might want to have input in product control. And the way we're going to interface that input is through a change process. So any part of controlling your content is having a full, complete, routed change process. So that being said, you're looking at a product structure of a furniture piece wall unit. And under that furniture piece wall unit is all of the digital data that is a part of the definition of this. And that includes, you'll see different icons here, different CAD documents, which might be SolidWorks or ProEngineer or anything else, and in some cases, a couple of Arbortext documents. So in this case, we have a 20,000 leagues under the sea document. And I want to make some comments, even though I don't have authorship to it. I can, submit, after reviewing a PDF of the document, submit all kinds of information against that. In this case, I'm going to do a problem report. And in this problem report, I'm going to suggest that maybe this document needs some edits. Now, of course, this could be a part of developing the document or maintaining the document. In most cases, change management is for after the document is released, but this is a collaboration option. So we're going to choose a quality improvement. Please implement the edits provided by the content editor. So I'm assuming we have a PDF that was for changes. Now, end items, I could attach the whole design of the entertainment center, but I won't. In this case, the document will simply need some editorial stuff. It has been checked out, so we'll finish. I'll submit it for processing now. And the great thing about this system is that now the people who review these problem reports are automatically notified of the existence of the problem report. So I'm going to switch over to my technical writer, And then Liz will actually check her page, show us her interface, refresh her home page and assignments.
Thank you, Dan. You can come to the home page. I see that I have 2 assignments, an old one where missing images, and I have a new one assigned today that is under review. I can look and see what the context is and the role of the person who assigned it to me. If I click on the assignment name, I get more detail. I have instructions, I have the subject line, I have priority, which is set by Dan, and before we do anything, we are going to go and take a look to see what the issue is in particular or related to the document. So I'll go to the workspace, and I'm looking at the 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. This is our sample document today. It is, in fact, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. We see that this is checked out, that I have it checked out, and let's launch Arbortext Editor directly from Windchill to see, to begin work on our document. It'll automatically open it in Arbortext Editor. This is a data map, what it looks like in Arbortext Editor. I've got all the sub-files, all the component content, and we can make changes to any one of these. To browse from Editor, I can go to the Object menu, choose Browse, and I'm automatically brought up to the workspace I have in Windchill. What I see is a different view into the server. And I can open any one of these to, and let's check this one out. This is Chapter 10. Always checking out to make sure that you are working and someone else doesn't clobber your work. And let's view this in Editor. Click the View button. It will launch Editor with the content directly from the server. And here we have Chapter 8, the Bay of Vigo. We can do any kind of adjustments we wish to do here in the editor. We can create automatically content references from other items that we have checked out. For example, I can drill into here and pick any one of the other paragraphs, graphics, or other valid elements that are allowed to do, and I can insert a content reference, an image, or a link and cross-reference. Once I've viewed what the changes are and I've reviewed the task on my home page in my assignments, I can make the changes, I can check in the work, and I can advance the task to the next step in the workflow process. I will verify that the changes must be made, are appropriate, according to the subject matter expert. Returning for approval. I will complete the task. My assignment, I now have an old one that is still pending my effort. I will accept that and return control to the subject matter expert, Dan. Dan?
I'm here.
Here we go. I return control to you.
Very good. So I can now go into my Change tab, have a look at my problem reports, look at the status of the problem report and the content within it, look at the history, check the routing. All things in this system have routing. And notice the status is that it's done, analyzed problem report, confirmed. I can see Liz's comments. So I'm going to take this problem report and we'll make this into a change request. take the information from the problem report into the change request. The proposed solution will be to implement the proscribed edits. I need this by Friday. Isn't it fun that we can put deadlines in there? I'm sure a lot of people just cringed, but it's always, good to have traceability. Again, same document, and finish, submit it. Now, Liz and I are playing the role of several people. One is the author, one is the person who reviews problem reports, one is the person who reviews change requests. Liz just got a notification that there's a change request now submitted with respect to that. I'm going to assume that from Liz's comments on the problem report that this change request is just as valid as the problem report, since it is the same thing. And from that, I'm actually going to create a new change notice. Now, this is where, theoretically, we've gone to a situation where this change request is no longer a request. We believe that there's enough room to implement some notices. Now, we're not going to go directly to doing the work just yet. The first thing we're going to do is, choose to edit the document and create an implementation plan. Now, at this point, if this was a major change, I could always do a full track process where this would go and be routed through predefined folks in a change review board. Remember, part of document control is always having a closed loop change process. So this next section, I'm going to assume this is a fast track, which gives me the authority to assign tasks. All notices have at least one task. I'm going to edit this task. And in this task, I'm going to change, modify selected objects to implement proscribed edits. The need date, I'll keep that there. And we'll choose next. In this case, I'm going to change this. We already have one revision of this. After the edits are done, I want to have a new revision. So when Liz works on this, she won't check out the A revision. She'll check out the B revision. And one of the things that is great about Windchill is that it will show you that things are already checked out. So I'm not able to revise this until Liz gets done with her original edits. But still, the task can be located, and I can go ahead and delegate that to her. So since she has it checked out, we'll make sure that she already has that there.
All right. If you refresh, I've checked in, and we can see that workflow change.
Oh, excellent. So we'll give that a try. It's always good to have the person you're working with actually on the phone with you. Excellent. So there's the new revision. Okay. I'll set the disposition of this old revision. Well, it's actually in work, so we can't. If this were in the release state, we could go ahead and set the disposition of it. I can set effectivity on this. So effectivity would be, when is this edit coming into effect? In this case, I want it to come into effect as soon as it is done. So we'll leave the effectivity unset. And now for this task, I'll also want to set the assignee. So right now I've assigned it just to myself, and I don't want to have to do all the work. So I can pick from my team. I'll have Liz do the work, and then I'll review the work afterwards. Now this is going to leave me with two roles. I'll review this task, and then I'll also audit the entire change notice. So finish. I'll set attachments. One of the attachments I would add would be the actual marked up PDF that Liz could refer to. Since we're pressed for time, there's not a lot of room to rely on that. But now that the task has been assigned, Liz should find that in her open dialog box. And if we look at my home, I don't have any assignments just yet, but as soon as that task is complete, my assignments page will refresh and show that it's time for me to audit what was done. So Liz, I'm going to set this back to you. You should have that task, and then we'll simulate that you've actually edited the stuff. I think it's also worth noting that Liz is in California, and I am in Missouri. So we are working real-time, live across the net in the system.
And the data repository is with Dan in St. Louis, and my documents computer editing is here in California. Do we want to pause and ask for questions briefly, Dan?
Let's go ahead and get through the task, and then we'll pause once we finish the closed-loop change process.
Okay. Complete change notice task. Now I have a task for a change notice. I have instructions, again, as always. I have the subject matter, which would take me to the description of the task. I can see down here which objects are affected, the name of the file, what state it's in, who's modifying, and what the resulting objects changes are. I have both A1 and A2 and B1. Do you want me to just complete the task?
That's right. Just go ahead and complete the task. This assumes that Liz has checked out the document and then typed a whole bunch of stuff. I'm assuming that a lot of the participants here have already know how to use Arbortext or how to edit stuff, so we don't need to show them how to type. We'll just show them the system to use to keep up with that.
Okay. Are you ready for me to pass the control back to you?
You bet. And if the system is working the way it ought to, which it will be, then I should see a task to confirm that you have made the edits.
All right. And back to St. Louis.
So if I refresh my screen, there's my review change notice task. See how it keeps everyone on the ball with what they're supposed to be doing? So special instructions would be, Liz, please work on this further, or none, and I can come down here and say, fantastic work. Task is, or I confirm that task is complete. Now, rework would send it back to Liz for her to work on some more. But in this case, again, we'll assume that it's complete. And now there will be an audit task for the final change management. And this assumes that I'm a higher-up quality guy who reviews all change notices as they come in. So again, you want to have a closed loop. You don't want folks to say work is done when it's not. So this will automatically notify what we call a change admin 3. I have audited the work, and it is complete. So now if we look at our change history with regard to the document that we were working on, our related objects changes. we can see all the changes and work that was done submitted. Now this is not just the most current changes, so any change that's ever gets submitted against this, we will have the number, what it was, people's comments, who was supposed to check on it, who had the different roles. So you can see how clearly this goes through and shows the change notice. Now I just want to kind of end this part of the presentation by going back to the product structure.
You click Product, Details.
And starting the same process again with any one of these documents, which happen to be CAD documents, which could be created in AutoCAD or ProEngineer or SolidWorks or whatever. But notice they're related right next to each other. So we have the manual and book about the item and the CAD models that describe the item right here. This could also include manufacturing or any other type of item. So at this point, let's go ahead and take a quick break, and we'll pass the control back to Dave, and then Dave will field any questions that may have come during our presentation. So David, you have the comm.
So we do have a question in the queue. This is Janice. One person would like to know, I think this question is for Dan, could you describe briefly the difference between Content Manager and PDM Link?
Well, I think that's actually an excellent question. And the fact is they are both identical pieces of software. The difference is in licensing. So PTC licenses Arbortext Content Manager for use with Arbortext, and PDM Link is for use with any kind of CAD models or documents, and Arbortext. So the fact is they are interchangeable in any respect.
Okay. Couple more questions, and if anyone else has questions, please feel free to type them in your question box. Next question is for either Dan or Liz. Can I configure my output documentation based on the product configuration and do this automatically?
So Liz, I'll let you field that if you want to.
Okay, can you repeat that one more time, Janice? I want to make sure I have all the pieces.
Certainly. Can I configure my output or documentation based on the product configuration and do this automatically?
So I'm not sure I've got the whole question. Whether you want to associate document content chunks with particular parts, that's what we're seeing here. Right now what we see, we've associated a whole document map, a whole book with this furniture part. In the guise that we're writing a book on 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, and we're talking about the furniture that appears on an 18th century sailing ship. You can associate individual pieces of content with individual CAD components from your product design so that you get a more streamlined development process. The typical case, if I'm answering correctly, and please type into the question box and ask and tell Janice if I'm not getting your question correctly. There are cases where if you've got a particular product configuration that you're using one part, that necessarily means you're using 3 or 4 other parts. And if you're not using that part, you're using a different one, you get a different subset of sections and content that's related to it. And yes, you can automatically associate your content with the parts, just like we're doing here in the same function, same fashion. And then you would automate production to final components. You would automatically create the PDF or the HTML rendering, and it would be delivered back to you in Windchill and can be attached to a task as part of that workflow process, and you'll see the rendition of the content as related to that piece of product development.
So
Does that answer the question?
I believe that does. I think one of the clarifying things is they were saying, think of a car with multiple options.
Right.
Yeah, so whether you're talking CAD or documents, this representation part, if you have the publishers set up, and the publishers is a part of a consulting thing that Single Source Solutions and Sequoia Etc specialize in. But if you have the style sheets, or you have the Config Pro, or the preferences document for SolidWorks, or any of those set, then Windchill or Arbortext Content Manager will create visualizations or end objects, deliverables, automatically and put them in this representation pocket of the document. So they'll be automatically associated, and then anybody who doesn't have the authoring tool will be able to look at, view, red line, whatever on that particular document.
Okay.
What we've got, part of what we have is a change in vocabulary for technical publications people coming to look at the Windchill product suite. And when they talk about a representation is any end output variant of your content. That's the PDF rendition, it is the HTML rendition, it's the CHM, it's the Spanish version or the French version, right? And in any of those outputs. So when they talk about renditions, that's what we're talking about. Janice?
Okay. I have one more question in the queue, and I believe you might have already answered this, but I'll ask the question. Can I create output that combines multiple versions, for example, some from version A and other portions from version B, etc.?
So as far as Arbortext is concerned, that is controlled through several different pieces. It's in part done by the map, right, that defines the content package. If we're talking data, we're talking about the content map. If we're talking DocBook, it would be the top-level DocBook structure, or your top-level DTD element that defines the content structure. It's also defined by, if you're using profiling in Arbortext. Dan, can you hand that control back to me briefly? And we'll show this just sort of off to the side. There's various ways to control what you're seeing, and one of them has to do with the profile elements. And you can, in here, it would be there are attributes on an element, but I can choose, what audience I'm working for. I can choose what product it is, and that's the attributes that apply to that. So you might have a different version for different attribute selection. You might also want to, and Windchill can identify those as variants. There's a package in Windchill that does just what Editor does with these profile elements inside of Windchill itself. So it's called Options and Variants. And it helps you manage those versions of content so that you can mix and match and deliver them however you like. Janice?
Great. Do we have time for one more question? There's one more question in the queue right now.
Sure.
Okay. This question is for Liz. What is the difference between reference document, described by document, and dynamic document?
Actually, a question for Dan. Are we looking at the document types?
Yeah, that's what we're talking about there is in Windchill, it divides up different types of files and data so that you actually can, have different pockets and different ways of handling data. It does not require that all things be different, but if you look at CAD documents and dynamic documents, those are treated in a certain way, and the system automatically assumes that there's information in the file about other documents that it's related to. It also chooses a certain type of change process for these documents that might be slightly different, and a different promotion process. Whereas you have regular documents, and underneath regular documents you have both general documents, reference documents, and then you could have a whole host of subtype documents like quotes and purchase representations and requirements documents. All of those can have slightly different ways in which they're revved, slightly different ways in which they're done, handled, controlled, and related to other objects in the system. Any of those documents could be any file type, but the significance of them is that you use them in the way that most accurately fits your processes for the types of documents. So, regular documents, dynamic documents are always going to be things that are out of Arbortext or FrameMaker or one of those structured XML documents. Just like CAD documents are always going to be things like ProEngineer files or SolidWorks files or CATIA files or UG files, where documents could be anything that's more of a flat file format, PowerPoint, Word, AutoCAD even in some cases where it's just a single flat document and the relationships are all handled manually and there's not that information within the file that needs to be mined. So those are the significant differences. The fact is you can use these however you need to for your organization. But as far as Windchill is concerned, the only difference is that the level of control that you put on them and the workflows that are audited with.
From an Arbortext perspective, the difference between a dynamic document and a regular document, I'm not sure about reference document, the difference between the dynamic and the typical document is whether or not it has subcomponents and you want it to play by bursting rules. So one of the things that you can implement in Windchill as part of the check-in and check-out service is you can define that if I check out the data map, I get all of the dependent documents. Everything else that's part of that data map comes out when I check out the map. If I choose to have topics that have nested topics, I can define a bursting rule that will split those into multiple files inside of Windchill. And the same thing will apply, right? When I check out the top level, it'll check out the dependencies, but it will store them separately so that I can use them as content chunks in other documents. If you don't want to have that sort of dynamic play in your document, you've got Word or you've got FrameMaker or you've got PowerPoint or PDF, where you don't split it into pieces, that's a regular document, and Windchill will treat it differently. Any more questions, Janice?
Nope, I think that's great for right now. And again, to the audience, feel free to type in questions during the presentation, and when we take the next break, we'll make sure we address those questions. So turning it back over to the presentation.
Dan?
Got it. So, folks, what I want to do now is we've just generally shown you an interaction between Arbortext and Windchill. I want to take time to show you how Windchill can be a tool for collaboration and data management, not just for Arbortext, but for everything. So I kind of want to give you an overview of the tool. A lot of times when folks are looking for document control, it becomes a very narrow focus, and people forget about all the other folks who are impacted by the data that we do. So by understanding what capabilities Windchill has, hopefully you can see how you can relate that back into your entire organization so that maybe people can become a little more self-sufficient in working with you rather than, giving you the information too late in the process or too early or when it doesn't matter. So in Windchill, everyone who is a stakeholder will have the ability to have a home page where they can look at their assignments, things they've updated. You can see some of the stuff that I've worked with recently. This is your most recently used list like you have in almost all applications. Checked out work. I've kept my work pretty clean and it's not checked out anymore. Assignments relates again to the same as the home page. Updates, it's just the more comprehensive list. Checked out work, this includes all of the same as my bottom on the home page. It's just focuses on that. Packages are packages that I've created for me to work with. Workspaces are my own private little workspaces where I actually make changes to files especially using CAD the CAD tool or the authoring tool, the original content tool. These can also be useful for Word documents or PowerPoints or any kind of document that I'm creating for the system. Meetings, this is simply a list of the type of the meetings that I have coming up. Notebook, this is where I can keep my own personal stuff. This is kind of my shared folder. Keeps it backed up and safe, but I can add any kind of document that I really don't want other people to get into. Or hyperlinks to places on the web that I find useful, but I might not want to share with the entire group. It's my own private little notebook. Subscriptions. Subscriptions are places where I can pick any object and say, you know what, I may not be involved directly in this object, but I'm interested in it, and I want you to tell me whenever this is checked out or whenever this is updated or revised or anything of that nature. So under a subscription, I can kind of add myself or insert myself into the various processes that are going on within the company. So even if I'm a CAD operator, I might be interested in how the manual is developing, so I may subscribe to the work that Liz does. Reports, standard reports. These reports will change based on what kind of major tab you're in. And then your utilities, where you change your preferences, look at your calendar and everything else. So that's the home major tab. If we go to the program tab, we get into something that we haven't talked about before. So we were talking about change management and rigid control. Well, we also have project management, which is a little bit freer control. If you think about the difference, you have the same type of workflows, the same type of closed loop, but in program and project, you're focusing more on initial creation of items. So if we were first building the 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea book, we'd probably do that as a project rather than as a change. Now, once that book was released and in the general repository, then we would need to use the change management to iterate the revisions. But until it's released, we need a nice sandbox where we can work with other people to develop the work that we're doing. So that's the project tab. And under project, just understand that, we have Gantt charts and project plans and milestones and project templates and new product introduction templates. All of the things that you currently manage now in Microsoft Project, you can manage here. In addition, we actually integrate with Microsoft Project. So if you're using that as your planning tool, you can now integrate that with this system to become your execution tool. In other words, actually see the stuff that we were supposed to work on. You've already seen extensively the product repository. So under product and under library, you have all of the different products that you're working with. Your technical publications are all going to be a part of some product definition. Theoretically, they're going to be used by someone, and they're going to be associated with something and end up in an end user's hands somehow. And in all cases, that's going to be a part of some other larger project. If you're working on a Boeing 747, there's quite a few publications that will be associated with that. Just the same as here, we have a couple different publications. This could be a quality manual, an assembly manual, and then CAD documents for manufacturing. When we go, change is a monitor of all of the different types of changes that go on. You can follow each one of these tabs. It makes each one is pretty self-explanatory. Personally, I like to look at the change monitor. We can look at how many change reports have been submitted, how many are full track or fast track or no track, how many change notices we have and how many they're done, how many are open, how many are closed, and we can follow all of this through the entire system. Finally, Windchill also has the ability to control suppliers. So if you outsource with your content development for various things, or the actual publication, you can actually set up your different suppliers in here and work with them. So that's a quick tour of Windchill, and we only registered an hour for this presentation, so I did want to give you a brief little overview. So if you have any questions now, I'm going to go ahead and turn it back over to Janice. And Janice, can you let us know if we have any questions about the interface as we're going here?
Yes, I have one question. How does this help manage translations? And I guess that's for either one or both of you.
So I can think that one way would be work with your suppliers, because you've got a translation vendor who is external to your repository. Windchill can both deliver content out to your translation vendor and receive the translated content back in as a rendition or version of the source. Dan, do you want to talk a little bit about the supplier module?
One of the ways you can see that happening is when you are in, say, a project as you're developing stuff. One of the things that you might do in the project is say, hey, translate this needs to be translated, and then you outsource that translation. When they check it back in, one of the things you'll look at in your product is you will actually see, when we go to our folders, maybe you'll have a folder that is not just Arbortext documents, which is all these bursted, in this case English, but you might have French documents. And then you can actually, through Windchill, say, hey, this is the French version of this chapter, and this is the German version, and this is the other version. So that when your publisher goes in and says, hey, I want to publish the German version of this manual, it goes in and it knows which translated piece of data gets substituted for what. So those relationships get tracked directly within Windchill. Does that make sense?
It does. I'd also say that part of this being, what was I going to say? For publishing, once you've got a rendition in with translated content, if you're using the publishing engine, there's two ways to go, right? You're automating publishing and the creation of your output formats, or you're doing that by hand through some other publishing process. And Windchill can either kick off that process, or it can tell you that it's time for you to do so. If it's automated, the publishing engine will know that if it's coming in to create the Spanish version, that it will pull the Spanish content. That's all part of telling it what documents you want it to pull, where you want it to get it from. It's all the profile and controlled through the workflow. And I think that's the second half of answering that question. Janice?
Okay, I have another question. Can you create only a subset of information that is associated with a specific task to help customer service response getting the right information to the user so they don't have to look through all the docs? And they said, think of it this way, it's the customer service response, and here's what we talked about, and here's the information you need. Does that make sense?
It does. There's a lot of assumption in that question. You can create any content you want. Right, the easy answer is you can create any content you want. You can deliver whatever subset you want that you're publishing, right? But there's a lot of assumption there that says, how do I define a document that's appropriate for customer service? Do you have your content chunked sufficiently that you can pull it together and just create a dynamic document structure that you pull the content in and say, okay, this is the one that can go to the customer in response to this field alert question. And that's going back and forth between what you would do in Editor, what a technical writer would do, and what workflow you've implemented in Windchill. And it sort of spans both arenas. But there's nothing prohibiting that to happen as long as you have created the task, the assignment that is attached to the part or the question and you're tracking all of that information and everyone's entering their comments and being responsible corporate citizens, then the right things will happen, assuming everybody does the right job. I'm not sure if that answers the question, though, Janice.
I believe it did. Thank you. I have no other questions at this time.
All right. So David has a little wrap-up for us. And so, David, I'm going to pass the presentation to you. And
okay.
Then
while you're passing
go ahead
control, I have a couple more polling questions.
Hold on just a second. We have some polling questions.
So here's the first question. Okay. If you can go ahead, the question is did this presentation meet your expectations? Okay, and the next question. Next question is, would you recommend this or will you recommend this to or other webinars to colleagues? You can just take a moment and select yes or no. Okay. And one more question. Would you be interested in improving your existing content management? So please choose one. Okay, thank you, Dave. I think that's the last of my polling questions.
Oh, great. Thanks, Janice. Well, we hope, as you saw today, that we took the time to demonstrate and discuss the unique capabilities that PTC provides for product management and associating that with product information in a single repository, so that in the future, using this product, you could synchronize both your product design information and your product documentation. Before we conclude, just a brief overview of who we are. Single Sourcing Solutions is an elite PTC partner specializing in the Arbortext and MathCAD products. With over a decade's worth of experience in Arbortext and single sourcing development, we help customers develop and deliver their mission-critical information delivery goals so that they can be more effective, more productive in a shorter period of time using the Arbortext products. We're very heavily involved in the Arbortext community and can help you get up to speed on these products in a short period of time. Sequoia Etc is a technology solutions provider for best-in-class integral product development, specializing in the PTC family of products for PLM and product data management. That concludes our presentation for today. If you have questions or would like more information on other services or support that we can offer, please contact us at www.single-sourcing.com or www.sequoia etc.com. Thank you for your time today. Enjoy the rest of your day.